heat.
It's funny you say that, Jen. I was just changing my mini split in my office
Hmm.
between heat and air condition because my spot gets so extreme and I was just like,
Yeah.
it's so hot up here.
Yeah.
So putting on the AC. What about you? What's the temperature like in your area?
Well, yesterday it was 105. The
Like
previous
for real or just how it feels?
No, for real, for
Oh my
real.
gosh.
And then previous that on Friday, I went out to Palm Springs with my mom, and it was 120. That's bad. That's bad. Like you walk out, and
No.
the air itself feels like it's
No.
in your skin. Yeah,
No. Now, do you have humidity there? Is it
not much. Now we're getting a little bit of monsoon flow. So
yeah.
like if you look at the mountains and we're at the base of the mountains, there's thunderheads that are building up. So like yesterday it was like
Mm.
24%, which is a lot for us. Usually we're like 5 to 10%. I could feel that you can feel the 24% difference when it's that hot. It
Oh my
feels
gosh.
yeah.
So we have really bad humidity here,
Yeah.
but we don't get that bad of temperatures.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say though, 90 is not bad when it's dry. If you're in the
Right.
shade, 90 can
Right.
be pretty comfortable.
Right.
In the sun, yeah. And then once you get over like 105, it's just so crazy miserable. I feel so bad for the people who work outside or have to be outside or delivery drivers because your
Yep.
car doesn't stay cool. And it's
Well, they're
just
not doing anything in your area right now, Jen, where you have to do like electricity turn off things.
not so far not. And we had a couple fires a couple weeks ago and we're okay with that. I haven't heard anything about the power surging. A lot of times when it gets super hot, they have to like do brownouts or rotating blackouts or something.
Right.
We're
Right.
lucky we're on the same grid as the hospital, so
Yeah,
we
you
are
do.
exempt from
Yeah.
the rolling blackout things. But sometimes people will hit a transformer or a transformer will blow or something like that'll happen and we'll still lose power, which is crazy because then you've got to go somewhere
That
cold.
is
And we have
awful.
cats. So it's not like we can all just go hang out at the library because we got to take the cats with us because when it's that hot, you don't
Yeah,
want to leave them at your house. So
Jen.
I know.
I sure do love my friends that live in California, but I'm not quite sure that I will I would ever
Come
make
visit when it's not July or
yeah.
August, and then you
Yes, I'll visit, but I won't stay.
yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, no, I've been over here. Honestly, you asked the temperature, and I thought it's been a couple days since I've gone outside. My husband has been running errands to prepare for. We have a big weekend this weekend, and so we have a party and coming around. And so he even asked me last night, "You want to go?" And I said, "No, I need a break from the kids. Give me some. Take them."
Yeah.
Take them and leave me. But he's been doing some yard work. And I will say, I'm lying kind of, not intentionally. I did this weekend go to a swim party and I went to an outdoor amusement park. And I didn't so much notice it at the swim party because, of course, I was around the pool and it was cool. But on Sunday at the amusement park, I was sweating in areas I didn't know sweat. Like it was, it was pretty intense. And I realized how I'm not cut out for that anymore.
No, and I think about, I mean, when I grew up, we didn't even have air conditioning. I can't even imagine we had a swamp cooler or an
What is
evaporator.
that?
It's an evaporative cooler. You don't have, it only works in the desert because it requires you have this box with a fan inside and it's got these, they look like straw pads on the outside. They get soaked with water. So as they evaporate, they cool the air and then the fan pushes it into your house. And there's a reason they call it a swamp because there's like a drip pan underneath that ends up growing mold and stuff from all the water. And so your house smells like a swamp. And so, I mean, I
Yay.
literally can walk into a building and go, oh, they have a swamp cooler because it's got a distinctive
And they
smell.
still make these?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People still use them. So we only had it's in like it was in my parents' bedroom in the back of the house, and then you'd put a fan like in the living room to kind of pull the cool air out. But yeah, we didn't have AC, and so we were always in like the neighbor's pool or playing in the sprinklers or a kiddie pool or slip and slide, all those fun things. And I mean, I remember being hot as a kid. Like we'd be riding our bikes, then you'd come in, you're like, oh, I'm so hot, but I don't think I could deal with that now as an adult. No, definitely not. But
It's
Yeah.
first world problems, right? Yeah. Zan, no, Zan. Zan says people don't have AC there. What's the temperature like in Spain, though? Is it hot and humid? I'm curious because
It's now too. A lot of Europe is really hot right now.
really,
Yeah.
God, so many things to think about. So many things. I am just grateful that I live in a world where there is air conditioning nowadays, right? Like, and grateful to have it. But gosh, it's like when the kids, when we were at the amusement park, I'm like, this is so hot. And I was actually talking about some of the beautiful luxuries we have today. And my kids were like, so did you have computers as a kid? It went down that. Did you have, a place to cook your food? Did you?
We did, but we did have a microwave for a long time. I remember we didn't have a dishwasher for a long time. I remember getting those things probably late elementary school.
Oh my gosh. I think my kids will grow up now and their kids will say, we'll ask them questions like, did you really have a time where you had to vacuum the floor and the robot didn't?
Right. Yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the next generation. It's true though, and as you all know, I had done my Laura Ingalls Wilder trip, and part of what made her books so interesting was that she was really on this cusp of change. She was sort of the end of the frontier prairie, and then she lived through lots and lots of change because she died in 1957. So of course, trains, telegraphs, telephones, cars, airplanes, World War I, World War II. She lived through a lot of change. And I used to think about that at the time. And then I think actually the rate of change with technology is more quickly now. And so we have probably actually lived through more technological change than she has, and I think about that occasionally, one phone in our house stuck to the wall with a really long cord, no answering machine, no call waiting. I mean, all that stuff didn't
I
happen
remember that.
in well into high school. And you had 3 channels on TV. You had to watch something when it was on. And
Right.
if you
And
missed the episode, you had to wait till it was a rerun, right? You couldn't just find it somewhere else. So, I mean, same thing with movies. If you missed the movie at the movie theater, unless it ended up on the Sunday night movie special, you were never going to see it again. So, those things seem really strange now, right? But
It does. It does, but I mean, I think it's the compound and evolution of the technology world and of growth and of progress, and actually unintentionally parallels to what we're talking about today. Because I think years ago, when people would launch a book, you would only do it. And I say years ago, maybe not even that long ago, years ago, pre-COVID, you would have a book launch at a bookstore or at a restaurant or at a community center within a business. But COVID, the pandemic, changed a lot of things for people. And it actually opened our eyes to other ways of launching, and the whole virtual book launch journey unfolded and is continuing to grow and allows us to kind of reach people in lots of different ways. So it'll be funny. I think authors will probably in the future will look back and go, you mean you really got together and had a piece of cake and like a champagne toast? Yes, we did. Thanks for asking.
Well, and I think what's so interesting too is that the self-publishing, the advent of that has really pushed the technology in publishing. I've been reading Laura Ingalls Wilder's original manuscript, Pioneer Girl, which was never published. And South Dakota Press the Historical Society put together an annotated version of the manuscript. And so it's the manuscript plus notes with Laura and her daughter Rose back and forth, and their agents and the whole progress thing. And what really struck me was that, in 100 years, traditional publishing has not changed. You still have to submit the manuscript to an agent. An agent will submit it. They will decide if they want it or not. Maybe they got to revise and resubmit, and there was a lot of back and forth. Now that original manuscript ended up being the source material for all of her other books. But I keep thinking that without, as much as sometimes Amazon irritates us, their advent of the Kindle and opening up KDP and allowing anybody to put things on their platform for publication, that opened up the self-publishing world. And that allowed all sorts of innovation that would not have happened if it was just up to traditional publishing. And so things like book launches and stuff that comes out of that traditional the history traditionally of traditional publications and how people traditionally did book launches. Once this, like you said, the self-publishing came out, you had COVID, you have technology, people started being more creative and imaginative because they didn't have anyone telling them you need to do it this way, you have to do it this way. They could be as creative as they want with it. And I think that has been a really, really great advent.
It has, right before, or I say right in the thick of COVID, I was a part of a women in business cohort, and I was they had a presenter that was talking about sales. Well, lovely timing, people, when the world was imploding. It was like, great, let's talk about sales. And I will never forget when she went around and she challenged us to figure out what the difference was to think differently and think different. And think differently has the concept of looking at the stuff inside your box. This was my takeaway. You have your box of tools that work, and you're going to get a little bit creative, maybe push the margins a little bit. Thinking different altogether is like taking that box and putting it in the closet, closing it up for a rainy day one day. And instead, now we're evaluating a whole new way of doing things. Without it, you will be no longer will be relevant, right? And so I think when we think of book launches, that's where it's evolved. Okay, so before we go deeper in, Zan made the comment that in Spain, it's only humid in August, which just so happens to be coming up. So yay. And wow. Jen, welcome to
Grace is here. Yay.
Hi, Jen here. Yeah, she's got a new book that's about to come out and has some launch events happening. So it's really perfect timing. So yay.
Think different was Apple's slogan for a long time under Steve Jobs, and people were really upset because that's not grammatically correct. It should be think differently. But I think it really goes to your point, right? I mean, I think that's exactly your point of, are we staying in the box? Or are we creating a whole new box, creating a whole, like, not even a box, just outside of it, and thinking way outside and just redoing the paradigm and saying, what can we do? What's the possibilities here? And I think one of the things that's always stuck with me about what Steve Jobs said was that, a lot of times, you'll survey your customers and going to ask them what they want. And he goes, but they don't even sometimes know what they want.
No,
we have to think about what would be great, that if we create, they'd be like, oh my gosh, I want that. I didn't even know I needed it or that I wanted it, right? Until you created it. And I think as creatives, we have the ability to do all that lovely, lovely thing. We are the ones that can create those worlds. We can create different experiences. And I think all of that should be reflective in your launch. I mean, do something that is very cool and related to your story, your book, your message, however you want to get that out. Think about how you can do that, because really the sky is the limit. You can do whatever you want to do. There are no artificial constraints anymore of what a launch should look like. It can look like whatever you want it to look like. And I think it's fun to have fun and to celebrate. And so I think that's a great way to approach it.
It is. When I first made the pivot from corporate America to entrepreneurship or authorpreneurship, there were some people from my corporate world who sent me some messages very, quickly afterwards. And they asked me, well, Stephanie, where did all these ideas come from? Like, you're just like rocking and rolling. And I remember like reflecting back and thinking, oh, wait, it was the box that I was working in that was holding me back, that really all of this potential was possible, but I was limiting my own self based on the constraints and confinement that the organizations and corporate America had given. So this is our permission to you, authors, listeners, today or in the future. Throw away the box. We're going to give you some recommendations of things that have worked for Jen and I, but let it be a stepping stone, a launch pad for you to be able to take a leap and really create a launch experience that works for you and your readers. Before we go too much farther, Jen, I want to just elaborate and get your thoughts on this, because when people think about a book launch event, we a lot of times think about, and we'll get to that, but think about the experience for your reader. But I don't want authors to ever neglect that you need a celebration launch for you too. Doesn't have to be massive, but don't overlook that. You have just accomplished something major that so many people in the world want to do and so few people actually accomplish. So for me, sometimes that's taking my family out to hibachi grill and having, edamame and, fried rice makes me happy, right? But for others, it could be, celebratory in other ways. Jen, I know we recently gave that advice to another author, but what are some thoughts that you have, even for like just personal celebration?
Yeah. I really do think there's something about closing that work loop with a celebration. So you've put all this effort into it, and then you need to close that loop with a celebration. So the brain says, hey, we did something good. It was hard. It was challenging. We overcame it. And then let's celebrate. Let's have something fun at the end of it. So we want to go back and willing to dive in and do another book, right? And so I think really personally, what does that look like to you? A day at the spa, dinner with your friends and family, a special treat, bottle of champagne, like whatever it is that you love. Find those milestones to celebrate. So celebrate finishing the book. Yes. Celebrate when you hand it off and it's out of your hands, right? Mm-hmm. Celebrate the launch. Because sometimes, as we've talked before, when it's out of your hands and when it actually launches, sometimes aren't always the same thing.
Correct.
Build in lots of opportunities for celebration all along the journey, because it is a long journey and it's hard. You're using a lot of brain power and you want to reward your brain. So however you do that, little rewards, even with your writing sessions, right? Yes. So whatever that might look like when you've hit word count goals or number of days writing or whatever it looks like for you, build in some of those mini rituals. And then, then when you have the launch, it becomes kind of the culmination of all that.
And if you decide to do a celebratory launch or those little milestones, capture those and share it with your connections and followers. Yeah. It will get them excited to know what you're doing and why you're doing it and why you're celebrating, and also give them permission to do that as well. So I think it could also spur energy for virtual or in-person launch events where you do invite other people too. And that's what most people think about when they come to launch events, and they think about that. So I just didn't want to neglect the fact that go do something for you. Go for a hike if you like hiking, or, like I said, go to the spa, take a weekend trip away, do nothing and veg on Netflix and popcorn all night. I don't care what it is, but do something to celebrate. Then you can focus on the actual launch, which is really meant to be that pivotal moment where you tell the world, you preach from the rooftops that the book is available. And then you're allowing your potential readers and clients, current readers and current clients, collaborators, what have you, to join in the fun and celebrate alongside you. So I've seen beautiful in-person and virtual. And I think last time, Jen, you mentioned you've only done virtual. Am I correct?
It's true. Only virtual.
It's true. So prior to COVID, when my first book came out, I'll tell you a little bit about the in-person ones that I've done and that I've helped other authors do, just to get some ideas, and we'll pivot to the virtual. So my first book came out in 2018. And what I did was I actually asked my launch team, which consisted of about 150, 200 people, give or take, that had said yes, that they wanted to know more about my book and be a part of the celebration journey. I asked them, who did they know and where would they think a launch would be fun at? And what I walked away was 3 experiences that people connected me with and that I actually coordinated. Now, in retrospect, I did them all in a month, which was insane. I had a virtual launch too. I'll talk about that in a second. I would have probably dripped them over a couple of months. However, I was excited. And so I ran. And so the first one that I did was at a park. So there's a nearby park where we live. And my first book was really about kind of embracing moments. And so I really wanted there to be something family friendly where people could come and play in the water park. And the thread with all of them was I had the lady that did our wedding cake made different cakes for each of the launch events that aligned with the book cover. So that was fun. A lot of family and friends came to that event. We did have a semi-tornado experience close by. I do remember that. But that was fun. It was very low key. The second one was at a restaurant that a friend of mine actually worked at and was a manager at. So So it was a pizza joint. So we had a opportunity for people to come and eat pizza. And it was a different part of town. So you have to know that I was understanding my readers. My readers were not a corporate audience. They were family friendly and wanted that personal connection. So I didn't even know that they had a room that I could borrow at no charge because my friend was the manager there. And I did book signings and I had people who were coming from all over the city there. My third one though was my favorite. And it was not that I didn't like the other two, but I really liked this one because it's experiential.
Yeah.
So my book Color Today Pretty is about, it was about color and fun. And there was a local store that allowed you to create experiential painting stuff. And they took my logo and my brand and my book and created stencil designs that aligned with it, but on little wood blocks. And I invited kids to come and make a block, get a piece of cake and buy books. So that was a ton of fun in 3 different ways that we kind of launched it to reach my audience. Although I have worked with authors who've done corporate ones where they really focus specifically on inviting business owners and entrepreneurs in the area to come to an event, or doing it at a bookstore and a book signing space, doing one event where they've just invited everybody to come and have dinner with them. So there's different ways that people have navigated the in-person ones. And I really walk away with realizing, just like you had said earlier, you got to know your audience. What do they want? What do they need? And realize the local or the in-person are going to be local to wherever it's at, right? So if you have a following in your community, that might make sense. If you don't, but maybe another community, you might consider doing something there. I don't know, Jen, what are some of your thoughts?
I love how you tied it in though with the theme of your book, which is really important. That experiential, right? The enjoying the moment, embracing what's going on in your day and your daily life. So having it in a park where kids could come and play and families could be together, having the little craft thing where they could make a craft. I mean, I think all of that, those are great things to think about. And in nonfiction, it's nice and easy to kind of pull some of those themes out and say, how could I reflect that in kind of the real world? And I think that's a fantastic way to go. And I love that. I think, again, and this is sort of the difference between fiction and nonfiction too, right? And whether or not your book is more local, you do a lot of local speaking and you have a lot of that around too. So consider all of those things as you are going through. For, of course, my virtual, this is pretty terrible. My nonfiction book, I never really launched. I just sort of put it out there. I know, isn't that terrible?
We can relaunch it.
I know, actually, you and I have talked about that. Maybe we need to do it like a relaunch of that. So that would probably be true. I would say this is the thing also to remember is don't, and this is what happened with my nonfiction book. I was so busy and I had a lot of things going on. If I had waited till I could launch it, who knows when that would have been, right? Sure. So don't feel like if life is crazy and you're like, I don't know if I can pull this together, put your book out there anyways. You can do a launch party whenever, you really can. Absolutely. You can do it whenever it makes the most sense for you and your life. And so feel free to do that. But with my fiction books, a couple of things that I have done, a couple times I've been with a group of authors who've had books launching either around the same time or around a similar theme. And used to work better on Facebook, but we'd have Facebook parties and we would, people would come and ask us questions and we'd each take turns talking about our books and things. And we'd give away prizes and do drawings and that kind of stuff. And those used to work a lot better. Facebook, because their algorithm has changed. They don't show them as well. But if you have a nice group of people following you on Facebook or a lot of friends or a Facebook group, that can be a great way to do that. That's kind of a fun thing to do. I do know in the nonfiction sphere, during COVID, there was a gal who did a Zoom launch. And I think she set it up maybe through Eventbrite, but you had to pay like 99 cents to get her ebook. And that was kind of your ticket for getting into the Zoom.
That's cool.
And so that was part of the link. And then you would get the link once you bought your ebook and you got it, it would go to that. And then she did kind of a Q&A and ask questions and kind of very much things you might see at an in-person signing. But, and she was quite a subject matter expert. So it was totally worth it to be able to come and ask her questions and have things like that. So that can work really well for nonfiction. And lately my strategy is I do a series of emails running up to my launch talking about the different characters in my book, kind of a very much a behind the scenes. If you think of like the CDs that had like the director's cuts and the
Mhm.
behind the
Oh,
scenes.
I love those.
So I would talk about the characters, how I got inspired to write this book. There's usually a particular theme. Most of my books are set locally, so I actually go to
Mhm.
the sites
That's
and
cool
show
too.
video of, hey, this
That's
is
cool.
where this thing took place, this scene took place here, and show all of that. And so that kind of builds some excitement.
Yeah.
People love to know why, how did you get inspired, or what is that person
Mhm.
like? Or, that way they really get a flavor for what the book is like before it comes out. So that tends to be, what I do now for the most part. And also when you're launching more books, I've got whatever 17. Not all of them have really gotten into it
Whatever, 17.
because, and we talked about this in earlier in the seasons, different books, you
Yeah.
might have a different launch strategy. It's one thing to
Yeah.
launch a new series. You
Yeah.
might want to do a bigger bang versus a book kind of in the middle of the
Sure.
series, might not get as much attention. And certainly
Mhm.
when you're closing out a series, there are people that only read books when the series is complete.
Mhm.
Definitely want to emphasize the fact that this series is now complete. And so I think there can be some fun ways to do that. But certainly, even in fiction, you could have, a location, you could have a theme if you think of like themed parties, costumes, depending on all the different things that you're doing. You think about people who do cosplay, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. There's lots of ways to be fun and creative with that, whether you do it online or in
Or
person, you
yeah,
know.
you could do, I've seen people do, like, a signature drink during the launch party and
Right?
virtually, so they like even for
Yes.
virtual ones, so they send out what the drink is and everybody has it to
Love the
tote.
recipe. Yeah.
Yeah, or a recipe. I've seen other people do, where they're sending out kind of like a cookbook before or what have you. One of the things that I say, if you're going to do the virtual, and this is something I did with my launch team, but I'd love to open it up now with other books that I do for more, is I actually incorporated my launch I think it was on Facebook, but in theory it was a Zoom experience, but it was something that people could come in and out of. So it was like I did a little spiel in the beginning. And then if people wanted to buy a book, I actually had my husband who was managing the chat and he literally was processing payments and I was signing and packaging books for people. So it was like I
Awesome.
was signing an
Yes.
appointment.
That's
And
a really fun way to do it, and even if you don't do it even within a party, you can always shoot a little video of
yeah,
you signing a book to
exactly.
someone, packaging it, sending it off, and then shooting them the email.
Exactly.
Like it's very much like a fun way of almost being in person, but not quite.
Yeah,
And you
it
always
just
got a video of
it
someone
was
signing a book
fun.
to you, right?
It
That's
was
kind of
really
fun.
fun, and it got very emotional for me, so there were times that, like, I was literally saying, "Okay, so Jennifer, yours is ready, it's going out tomorrow," whatever. One other idea I wanted to just kind of leave y'all with as you're thinking about your launch is know as much as it is about, like, your current readers and the potential readers and what they need, also know what you want the book to do for you, and so, I'm doing a launch on the book that I released back in April. So this is proof. Like I launched it at an event, but I'm doing a launch in September, the week after the first day of fall, which is in alignment with my book on the life cycles and plant cycles and stuff. But I'm doing it at a little restaurant in a town, a couple like 30 minutes or so for me, called the Evergreen, which also aligns with my book's topic.
Mhm.
Um, now my books are actually in their store, so that has relevance. But we're gonna do it. It's a little cafe, and so we're gonna do a book reading, meet the author, book signing during lunch. But then I've also created a experiential creative therapy, which is a part of kind of what I do to integrate. And so we're going to be making resin jewelry and ink alcohol ink, flower, jewelry, little bowls, and all this stuff, right? And it's as much fills me up as it is about knowing like how can I lift the message from the page for my readers, but it's also kind of like a pipeline for additional work and stuff that we do. And so I want you to be thinking about that in the future as well. Zan says her second book is set in Spain. That's awesome. So those are great ideas. And yeah, thinking about different locations, right? You can have multiple launches in multiple locations. Don't think of the word launch as like the starting point and you can't go backwards. It's an anytime kind of journey for you. And then she also shared that, yeah, about using book plates. So that's another idea. I know some authors who do book plates, and they have stickers prepared that they can integrate to that make them easier. So there's no should haves around here, Zan. It's what you can in the future. So don't get hung up or stressed out about any of that.
Exactly.
Any last parting thoughts, Jen? This was a really good chat on
I
the
think
different ways to.
just celebrate. And I love the idea that you really can do this at any time.
You
You
can.
don't have to, if you're like, oh man, I should have done this or I should have done that. It's okay. Really. You can do it another time and really just be creative and enjoy it and have fun and celebrate. And that is really the whole point, because you accomplished something great and the people around you want to celebrate that with you.
They do. Don't neglect that celebration. So this concludes this 4-week series on book launching. I hope you found it really helpful. And next month, we're diving into self-publishing insights. I'm really pumped about this one because it is a growing space in the publishing world. And Jen and I both have navigated other forms of publishing as well as indie publishing. And so we're pumped to come together and do a sharing of the minds on all things self-publishing. Jen, any parting words? Are you ready to blast off?
Well, this is a reminder that authors, you have power, your words have power, and your message has power. And so we will encourage you to come here each week as we take that message to the page and beyond, as you launch your wonderful message out into the world and learn all about editing and publishing here with us.
Yes, we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.